How do you market or present your political campaign to the voters? How many different types of marketing methods and practices exist? What is the basic cost? Do I need a specialist or are there DIY methods? My goal here is to provide you with a structure and a basic plan to help you build a good campaign marketing strategy. This episode will be broken into 3 basic sections, and the last will begin to list the various types of marketing venues. Number 1, marketing structure and preparation. Number 2, tools for your marketing. And number 3, marketing venues. You need to know that your communications or your marketing is nearly always based upon a diminished universe of all likely voters in your district. There are some exceptions, and each venue approach will possibly use different targeting formulas. There are so many formulas that I could probably produce an episode just on those. First and foremost, we must begin with your preparation. Number 1, establishing your universe. Now, I've done workshops on doing the numbers before across the United States, but it is a big task. So let's focus on the basic. First, you need to know that no matter how many people are running against you, that the goal is either to be one of the top 2 or get 50% of the vote plus 1, or both, to win. Example, if there are 50,000 voters in your district, and it's known that 50% of those voters will vote, then you'll need 12,501 voters to vote for you. Essentially, that's 50% plus 1 of the estimated turnout. Now, the key is actually figuring out who they are. Your consultant understands this and should have already identified them, called the diminished universe. Upon completion, I can build budgets plus some added flavoring if needed. Now, once the budgets are accepted, pretty much ready to get started. 2, calendaring your base message phases. I normally color scheme on my calendars from cool to hot. The introductory phase is always cool color for me. It's the longest in time and can be from many months to many weeks, depending on when you start your campaign. And 2, the persuasion phase, I usually use a slightly warmer color and typically goes from 60 days out to the election day. You can begin in 90 days out, but you're stretching the voter retention strength by starting too early. The hard persuasion phase, I use a hot color scheme, and is basically set for about 2 weeks out to election day. But when I say election day, I'm referring to early voting, mail ballots, or traditional election. Also, important to note that most all RRP programs or rapid response programs are in this last phase. 3rd, communications and graphics. This is paramount to every marketing in this area. If you do not have a professional graphics designer and a communications person, you need to get one. Let's move on to marketing structure. So despite whether you are a new candidate or an incumbent, it's important to see that it is more about the voters. Their perspectives are what you're trying to influence. It's about introducing or reintroducing your name and the image that you're targeting to present. The vetting questionnaire, why are you running? That's a good point to start. Second would be the persuasion phase. Why are you better than the other candidates running against you? This is your contrast section where you compare you and your opposition. 3rd is not always used. I label this one as a hard persuasion phase. This comes into play when we are defending a campaign or attacking the opposition. Nonetheless, you should always be prepared. Tools for marketing. Your consultant and you, or your committee and you, or your manager and you need to use this checklist to stay on point. 1, campaign calendar. While this will grow in time, the basic should be established and available for use. 2 is your budget. Each marketing venue will have a cost factor applied. This hopefully is established before you begin. Consultants can easily know the basic cost, but so can an experienced supporter and activist if they are knowledgeable about cost factor. And 3, image packages. Your image package should include everything you need to get your campaign started. All items are attained easily, and normally your biggest costs there are your first political handouts and your websites. Most full packages cost between $1,500 and $3,000, and they consist usually of business cards, name tags, letterhead and envelopes, remit envelopes, first political handouts, and web presence. Notice I didn't take off my shoes to get to my toes to count. C, completion of your first stage of your platform. This is paramount in defining and presenting your image and goals. 4, color, theme, and slogan. Now, this is very important, not only in establishing a stable presence, but also for some of your venues, which you will need this to complete any planning. And 5, a complete listing of all the available media opportunities and outlets. And if done properly, your vetting will have covered most of these outlets. I have found that your supporters can be a good source for forgotten or unknown resources. And with any luck, you've employed or established a publicity person, which would make this section a whole lot easier to finish. Okay, so now let's move on to the list of venues and options. Please note that my goal here is to present to you how I, as a consultant, approaches a campaign marketing program. Each of these are not all mandated. Typically what is done is you and your team will choose wisely those items that we are budget capable of. So here are the basic marketing venues. A, field or grassroots campaign. B, direct mail programs. C, broadcast TV and social networking programs. There's an episode on this one coming as well. So let's start with D, local print media events and an advertisement. These areas can cost a campaign from $500 to $5,000. The budget here is on an availability and price. Try and think in terms of never leaving this budget item blank. It will serve you well as your campaign continues. E, printed flyers and handouts. And with any luck, you've already ordered enough to get you started with your image package and you have budgeted accordingly. But remember that you will need more in your field campaign or just attending basic events. My only caution is that you plan for enough, especially if you're using a field walk campaign. F, signage. Usually comes slightly later in the campaign, mainly in the persuasion phase, but your planning needs to be done quite a bit earlier, 60 to 90 days. Yard signs. Larger 4x8s will cost you from $60 to $100 or more. It often depends on the volume as well as the material, colors, and process used. Smaller signs, 18 to 24, they typically are applied to a supporter's house. Sometimes simply knocking on a door and asking if you can drop one, that's all that's needed. These smaller signs will cost you from $6 to $8 a sign. Window and event signs are typically your 13 by 19 or 12/18 and can cost you from $1 to $5 each. These are great for campaign events, home windows, apartments and business windows, indoor use essentially. Billboards, too many variables for me to assign a cost. Mainly it's about placement, size, and timing for placement and cost. Banners, these are typically larger and great for events, even replacing your larger 4x8 signs. You can roll them up and move them easily. Your cost could be from $50 to $100, depending on the size and custom factors like stitching and number of colors used and the number of grommets requested. It's my hopes that you can make the connection that everything begins with your vetting questionnaire. All this information is gathered in the beginning of your campaign. Conclusion. You must first identify your targeted universe. Then and only then can your marketing begin. All campaign marketing functions are on a phase type of communications: introductory, persuasion, and hard persuasion. Your overall cost and budget are factors very important to establish, track, fund, monitor, and implement. Each of your venues will have various levels of impact, like voter retention impact, cost, resources needed, and long-term voter support retention. When it comes to whether you need a professional or if you can do a DIY or not, each venue is different. You will need to make that determination yourself. Now, if I'm your consultant, I'll work closely with the candidate to make this determination or perform the work myself. Regarding my thoughts as a consultant regarding which venues are best, well, I'll admit, I would prefer to do them all and use all venues of the marketing options, but this is rarely achievable. My fees are simply based on a time and material and travel basis. Therefore, if a campaign can save, if I'm only using orchestration rather than full service, it might be best for the campaign. If this is helpful or useful, please hit the subscribe, like, and notification. And please feel free to buy me a cup of coffee. The link is below. Thanks for joining me. See you in the next episode of Direct Mail. A su servicio, which means at your service, Jess Cervantes. Thank you.